Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayemi, Menachos Daf Chaf. We begin on Yut Tes Amud Beis at the second line from the very bottom. Back to Rav's statement. Rav tells us that only where the Torah repeats itself, so it dictates something once and then again, that's meant to indicate to us that it's actually critical, that it's mi'akev. So only those that are repeated are mi'akev. But those elements of the hakrava process which are only mentioned once, although you're meant to do it, but if you leave it out, the mincha is still acceptable. The mincha or the carbon. Maskav Rav Huna, I have a question. Hari melach, what about salting the karbanos? Deloy tana beikra, we don't find it repeated in the pasuk. Uma akvabe, when you find that melach, salting of any type of carbon, as we're going to see later, is actually a critical. It's mi'akev. The Sani, we have a brisa, in fact, that tells us so. Bris melach olam hi. So the Torah relates to melach with the term bris, a covenant. It's a constant, non-negotiable. Shtei bris amur b'melach. That concept of bris is applied to salting the karbanos, and Rashi explains on the top line, shlo tifsik mi karbanos. It cannot be suspended. It's a constant. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Omer, he has a different source that it's absolutely essential. So there's no real halachic machlekes, Rashi says. It's just a matter of sourcing. He says, you know how I know that salt is absolute? Nemar kan bris melach olam. We have the word bris over here. Olam hu. But nemar lahal we have find elsewhere. Bris kunas olam. So the karbanos are connected to kahuna, and there too we have the lashon bris. So we connect the two concepts. We connect the involvement of a kain with a carbon and the presence of salt on a carbon. We connect the two. Kashem shei efshal karbanos b'lei kahuna, just like you can't have a carbon without kayanim. Kachi efshal karbanos b'lei melech, likewise without salt. So clearly melech is mi'akev, and the question is why it was not repeated. Amar Rav Yosef. You're right. There's a machlekes, and Rav will side with the position that in fact melech is not mi'akev. Rav Ketan Dansvirli, he was like our Mishnah, Damar, who clearly tells us, Loi Malach, even if you skip the Malicha, it's still kosher. Because it was not repeated in the Torah. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye responds to Rav Yosef, Yihachi. If that's how Rav will learn our Mishnah, that when it says Loi, it means it was skipped entirely. What about Lo Yatzak? The Yitzika, the mixing with the oil. Right, the third pour of oil, Lo Yatzak, Nami. So there too, the word Lo means they skipped it, Lo Yatzak Klal. That cannot be so because we know that Yitzika is mi'akev, because that certainly was repeated in the Pesukim. Ella, so you must say that the term Lo Yatzak just means it was done but not with a kohen. Lo Yatzak kohen, Ella rather was done by a zar, a non-kohen, the owner. Achanami is here as well regarding the item of Lo Malach mentioned in the Mishnah. Who's to say that it means skipped altogether? It just means Lo Malach kohen, Ella zar. Although it wasn't done by the kohen, it was done by the zar. So you have no proof that the Mishnah, in fact, allows a carbon through without salt. Amalei, Rav Yosef responds to Abaye, but you cannot learn the Mishnah like that. That Malicha took place by way of a zar, not a kohen, because where is Malicha done? On top of the Mizbeach. So, how could you even entertain the thought that a zar, that a non-kohen would be sitting on the Mizbeach? It doesn't belong there. So of course, the term Loi Malach doesn't mean no kohen, yes zar. It doesn't belong there. It just means it was skipped altogether. And in fact, our Mishnah will hold that even if you skip the melach, it works. And that's how Rav holds. Another, an alternate pshat would be that Rav would agree that salt is critical for a different reason. So although it wasn't repeated in the Pesukim, but since it says Lashon bris denotes absoluteness. It's as if it was repeated in the pasuk for emphasis. Ask the Gemara, what do you mean it wasn't repeated? We're working with the assumption that salt was not repeated. It wasn't repeated, but Torah. In the same pasuk, repeats it. It starts with Chol Korban Minchascha B'Melach Timlach. He meant to salt the Korban Mincha. Don't suspend the salt. And then it repeats again. Al Kol Korban Chatakriv Melach. He meant to add salt to every korban. So of course it's repeated. It's emphasized over and over again. Well, no, that's not really a repetition. That has a different purpose. That pasuk is meant to specify which items need to be salted. It's not considered a duplicate expression. Hahu, that pasuk miboyle, like a desani, it's needed for the following brisa to tell us exactly which items need to be salted and which don't. Brisa begins. Kedesani. Ilu nemar korban b'melach. So again, the pasuk begins v'chol korban minchascha b'melach timlach. If the Torah leaves out the word minchascha and just chol korban b'melach without minchascha, I would say pretty much everything needs to be salted, even wood that's put on the mizbeach. Sheme'ani afilu eitzim, the dam or salt or blood of a korban, because they too are called korban. Shenikru korban. Rashi explains there's a pasuk that relates to firewood donated on the mizbeach as korban. It says v'hagoyrod you see palnu al korban ha'etzim, and certainly Rashi says is dam is called a korban shu ikar kol hazevach. Okay, so perhaps he meant to salt the blood or wood that was donated on the mizbeach. Comes the pasuk and says, you know what? Mincha only. Talmud mincha. V'chol korban minchascha. Not just any korban. Korban mincha. And we compare, right? Anything that's comparable to a mincha that shares the same features as a mincha will require salt. So how do you define mincha? Ma mincha miyucheda shachirim boin chayvala. What's unique, specific about a mincha? It requires another element to accompany it. You need firewood on which you burn the mincha. So it comes along with firewood. That defines the item of the mincha. Afkol, likewise. Any other korban which shares a similar characteristic, which needs to be burnt on firewood. So it needs firewood to come along with it. Shachirim, others, boin chayvala, required to come with it. They too need to be salted. So a murim, a varim of the oila, etc., etc. As opposed to eitzim, don't have that accompaniment of other wood. As opposed to dam, it's not burnt at all, so it doesn't have that feature. No salt. Okay, says the Gemara, if you're going to compare it to, if mincha is going to serve as a sort of a catalyst, as an example for what requires salt, perhaps we should tweak it differently. Perhaps we should compare others to a mincha in a sense that just like mincha is a matir, right, the kaimetz is matir, the shirayim for consumption, avkol shematir, likewise. Only things which have that same function, that are matirim, require salt. And therefore, blood is included, because blood is the primary matir of a korban. Avidam, shumat, shematir. Tamaloymar comes to pasuk and says, "Me'al minchasecha." The next words in the pasuk, from your mincha. What's that coming to do? It's coming to exclude something. V'loy me'al damecha. You don't place salt on your blood. Okay, so the mincha is in, the dam is out. Says the Gemara, but not only the mincha, because anything that's comparable to a mincha that requires firewood to come along with it, etc. But not dam. There's a special exclusion on that. Says the Gemara, Yachal tei mincha kula tuna melach. Perhaps the entire mincha needs to be salted, not just the kaimetz that's placed on the mizbeach. Tamaloymar. Again, back to the pasuk, korban minchascha. Only the portion that's used as a korban. Korban, the kaimetz, ton melach requires salt. Ve'ein ha-mincha kula tuna melach, but not the rest of the mincha. Continues the brisa. So if the term korban minchascha tells you to cover the kaimetz with salt, perhaps this only applies to the kaimetz. What about the levina that comes along with the mincha? Perhaps that also. How do we know it needs to be salted? The answer is yeah, because it's one and the same entity. Mar benis levina include the levina for salting, shekein ba'ima b'kli echad, because it's brought together in the same kli with the kaimet, with the mincha, so it's one entity. Okay, so far we have that the kaimet of a mincha needs to be salted, and the levina as well. We also exclude blood, because ma'al mechasecha comes to exclude dam. And we know that salting is not specific to kaimet or levina, it's basically anything that has a similar feature. Shachirim bo'in chayvala, it's the type of carbon that requires firewood to come along with it. But we can't include anything that's a mater like dam, because that's specifically excluded. Okay, so firewood is out, doesn't need to be salted. Blood is out, kaimetz is in, levina is in. Ask the Gemara, Menayin the rabbis, what about including other carbon materials for salting? Menayin the rabbi says, Halavoina ba'avnei atzma. What about levina that's donated on its own without a mincha? Or levina ba'avzich, levina comes in the spoons with lechem upon bakteris, or the teres that's brought every day, minchas kayanu, chas kameshech, sachim, all these types of carbonates. A muri chatos, the fats of a chatos, a muri ashim, muri kachim kadashim, a muri kachim kal, vivari oila, the limbs of an oila, velas oif, and the oila bird. Menayin, what about salting all these items? Talmud Leimar. Comes the end of the pasuk and says, it's all covered. Al kol karbancha takriv melach. It's meant to be applied to all carbonates. Okay? So that's the purpose of this whole long pasuk. It's not meant to repeat and to denote that salting is critical. It's just meant to give you direction in terms of what requires salting. Alright, let's go back to the brisa. So the brisa established that a kaimetz needs to be salted. Ein le'la kaimetz, perhaps only the kaimetz. Menayin l'rabbi salavayna v'rabbi. The answer is yes, because it shares the same kli as the kaimetz. So we seem to need that reason in order to include the levina. The question is why. So menayin l'rabbi salavayna, marbein salavayna, include the levina for salting shekein ba'ima b'kli echad, because it's in the same kli. Now why is that needed? Of course we know levina needs to be salted, because we've already set down the parameters, something which needs firewood to come along with it, which levina has. Levina is burnt on the firewood, on the eitzim. But Rambam just told me that the rule is ma mincha miyuchedes she'acherim bo'in chayvala, something which is comparable to a mincha, something which shares that same feature, which is burnt upon the firewood, requires malicha, while levina shares that fate as well, has that feature as well. The brisa means like this. Who's to say we can spread it out? Who's to say we can compare others to the mincha? Perhaps we can learn the pasuk in a very specific, limited fashion with a klal prat formula, which limits it very, very, very drastically. Perhaps we learn like pasuk like this. It begins with the word karban, right? V'chol karban. Karban is a klal, a general term. All karbanos are covered by salt. Next word is minchas. Mincha is a prat. It's a very specific, defined item. So now we have a klal, uprat, and perhaps we should limit our salting to mincha only. Ein b'chlal el masha prat. The Torah in the general only meant what it mentioned in the specific. Mincha, yeah, in. Yes. Midar chin but other items not. Hada amar. The brisa comes back and says, we're not done yet. Because the pasuk includes with al kol karbancha, which is again a general term, chazar v'kal. The Torah comes back with a general. Now we have klal prat klal, a full system to tell you yatadan el kena prat. We're not limited to the prat only. Rather, we can expand it and extend it to something which shares similar characteristics to the prat, to the mincha, which is as follows. Ma prat mefurush. What's specific about the mincha? Shachein bo'in chayvala. Because other materials such as firewood are needed for it to burn it on. Right? Afkol shachein bo'in chayvala. Likewise, other carbonates which share a similar definition require salt. Acherin the bo'in chayvala mani. What are these other materials that come with it? That's the eitzim. That's the firewood. Afkol eitzim. Likewise, another carbon. Right? Just like a mincha requires firewood and therefore needs to be salted, another carbon that has the same type of experience requires salt. Says the Gemara, who's to say that that the other items this other accompaniment is specifically wood. Ema, we can define it differently. Levaina. Just as a kaimet requires salting because it has accompaniment. Levaina. Right? Levaina accompanies the kaimets on the mizbeach. So likewise, let's include any carbon that has any sort of accompaniment. And now we bring the blood back into the picture. I see dam. Blood is included because it has accompaniment. Tikkun Nusachim, because we have the pourings of the wine and the oil on the mizbeach, which come on account of the carbon, which is primarily defined by its blood. So blood has accompaniment. It should require salting. Well, says the Gemara, you're assuming that Nesachim are considered accompaniments to the blood. No, Nesachim b'hadei imurim asu. They accompany the imur and the fats. They don't relate to the blood directly. So the blood doesn't really have accompaniment. My time, who's to say that the Nesachim are accompaniments of the imurin rather than the blood? Achilu v'shtiya. Because the fat is the solid food, so to speak, and the nesachim are the liquids. It's like when a person eats, right? There's food and drink. Likewise, regarding the mizbeach, let's assume that it's sort of one pair. Achila v'shtiya go together, and the nesachim are actually connected to neimurin. Adarabba. Well, you can go the other way. You can say that kapara v'simcha, that the nesachim is meant to complement the kapara that's done with the blood, because that's what happens. First you have a kapara through the blood, and then that brings simcha, which is expressed by the pourings of the wine, which is masameach alakim v'anoshim, right? That, like the pasuk says. So back to the question. Based on the mincha formula, the dam should be required to be salted as well. Ella, says the Gemara, levoina boima b'kli echad. There's a difference. Even if we should suggest that nesachim complement the blood, but it's different than the levoina complementing the mincha. Levoina boima b'kli echad. Levoina comes in the same kli as the mincha, but nesachim, they don't have that shared kli. Ein boin b'kli echad. So you can't really compare it. But regarding the other, definition regarding wood, aval eitzim, but comparing other items which have firewood to the mincha which has firewood, that's a true comparison. Right? Just as the kashrus of the mincha, the success of the mincha, the process requires firewood, the same with other karbanos that require firewood. That's a good comparison. Hence we know that any carbon that requires firewood to go along with it requires salting. Says the Gemara, but maybe only something which has both mincha features should require salting. How? Maybe we should say like this: Ma prat mefurish, just as the mincha is defined by the fact that it's shacher and boin chayvala. Others come along with it, right? The firewood. Number two, umateres. The kaimis is mata the mincha, permits the mincha for consumption, etc. So perhaps only an item which shares both features needs to be salted. Afkol, likewise, anything else that has both things. Shacher and boin chayvala umateres. Umayni, what do you have in mind? Levoina comes along, lechem apanim and those spoons that have both features because they need to be, burnt on the fire, and also the shari lechem, it's mata the breads. So perhaps only that needs melach. But other items, they don't have that double characteristic. Perhaps they don't need to be salted. The answer is no. Apparently, one feature is enough. Either the fact that it's a matter or the fact that it needs to be accompanied with firewood. Why? How do I know that? Let's recall the brisa highlighted from the words of the pasuk, to exclude blood from being salted. What does that tell us? Regarding the base requirement of salting, you see, blood only has the matter characteristic. It doesn't need to be accompanied with firewood, right? It's just sprayed on the mizbeach. It's not. So you see that the comparison is only with respect to one feature. One feature theoretically would be enough. Either the matter feature or the eitzim feature. And that's why the pasuk has to exclude blood, which has the matter feature. So what does that tell you? Apparently all other items can compare themselves to the mincha with respect to just one characteristic, one criterion. So as long as it's accompanied by firewood, that's enough. Okay, so at the end of the day, what requires salting? So the catalyst is sort of the precedent is the mincha, the kaimetz ha-mincha. But based on the klal prat klal, we learn that anything which is somewhat comparable to the kaimetz, it's a matir or it has the accompaniment of firewood, it also needs to be salted. And we exclude firewood per se, that's not accompanied by other. And the dam is a special miut from the pasuk ma'al minchasecha v'lo mi'al damecha. Let's go back to that miut. Mi'al minchasecha teaches v'lo mi'al damecha. So we exclude something. We chose to exclude blood. Ve'ema, perhaps we should exclude Eivarim of the carbon. Mi'al minchasecha tells you only the mincha v'lo mi'al berecha, not the Eivarim of the carbon. Who's to say to exclude blood and not the Eivarim? Says the Gemara, if you have a choice between the two, Mistavra Eivarim Havalei L'Rabuya. It makes sense to include Eivarim as opposed to the Dam, because they're more comparable to the Mincha, which is the source of the Melicha, right? Shekain, they have no less than 6 comparisons. Achein Boin Chayvela, Kamaisa, they're comparable to the Mincha in the sense that they have the firewood that accompanies. Ishim, which blood doesn't have. Ishim kamoisa, they're burnt on mizbeach, like the mincha, as opposed to the blood. B'chutz kamoisa, they're specific to the azora only, as opposed to dam, which sometimes goes into the interior of the Beis Hamikdash. Noisar kamoisa. They both share the noisar status if they're left overnight, as opposed to dam, but there's no isser of noisar if one eats it after the time. Tuma, a person eats these items when he's tamei, he's chayev kamoisa. So the Eivarim have that like the kaimetz, which the dam doesn't have. Me'ila kamaisa. In the kaimetz and Eivarim, we have me'ila. If one has a na from it, he's Eivar me'ila, as opposed to dam, which doesn't have me'ila. So there's so many similarities. So it makes sense that they share the same halacha regarding malicha. Adarabah. Well, if anything, dam havalei l'Rabuya, which should include blood and exclude the Eivarim, because we have some similarities as well between the dam and the mincha shekain mater kamaisa. First of all, just as the kaimetz is a mater, so is the dam, and also it's nifsal b'shkiyas achama kamaisa. Once nighttime comes, the dam is pasul, the day is over, right? And so is the kaimetz, as opposed to Eivarim, which you have all night to do. Hanach nafisha, says the Gemara, but the 6 versus 2, hands down, wins the contest, and certainly it makes sense to compare Eivarim and give it the same halacha as the kaimetz as opposed to dam. Amar. Let's go back and address one more point in that brisa, that firewood that's donated on the mizbeach doesn't need to be salted. Perhaps I should include afilu eitzim, v'dam, even firewood and blood shnikru carbon shall called carbon. The question is, who considers eitzim as a carbon? That's Shitas Rabbi, as Rabbi Danasi, as we're going to see in the next prices. The question is, ironically, Rabbi himself does require the firewood that's donated to be salted. The Rabbi needs to be salted. The sound we find in the brisa. So it says, "V'nefesh kisakar of carbon." A person will donate a carbon, and the word carbon there is extra. Malamad, we learn shemisnadvan eitzim. You can donate firewood as a standalone donation. How much are you meant to donate? What's the minimum requirement in terms of quantity? Kama, v'kama, shnei gezar and 2 blocks of wood. We find in the pasuk that in fact firewood can be considered a carbon. By garolas hipal, no carbon eitzim. We made lotteries to decide who's going to bring the carbon eitzim. Rabbi Amar says, Rabbi, in fact, eitzim, when you donate wood, carbon mincha has the status of a carbon mincha. Utunun melech, utunun hagash. You have to do salting and you have to do hagash. You have to tap it to the corner of the mizbeach like a mincha. Rabbi adds, according to Rabbi Shita, it's called a mincha. Eitzim tun kmitza. You have to do kmitza. You have to crumble up some of the wood and do kmitza on it like a mincha. Amar Papa takes it a step further. Rabbi, according to Rabbi, that is called a mincha. Eitzim tzricham eitzim. This bit of kmitza wood that you're going to put on the mizbeach, right? It needs to be burnt on top of other. Or the entire eitzim that you donate, that needs to be placed on other firewood and burnt like any other carbon. Okay, so we see clearly that according to Rebbe, who considers a donated firewood like a karban mincha, you need kmitza, you need hagash, you need salt. Right? And in the previous brisa, we relate to something about a wood donation, but we sort of leave out the salt. Says the Gemara, Sami mikana eitzim. You're right. The brisa earlier did not discuss eitzim. Let's delete the word eitzim, because in fact, if you donate firewood, it's considered like a carbon that needs to be salted. Okay, perhaps I'll leave the next piece for tomorrow's daf. Let's just recap today's daf. We discussed the melach, the melicha requirement on various karbanis which fit the criteria. Is melicha ma'akiv? According to some Tanaim, certainly. According to others, we're not really so sure. We ended up with an interesting point that you can actually donate eitzim according to Rebbe, and it's treated like a mincha regarding all the halachas of akrava. All the best to you, and atzlacha, Rabbi.